The puzzle of Tokyo's quiet streets. When I decided to take my first solo trip to Tokyo, the decision to stay not in a hotel, but with a Japanese host family seemed almost crazy. I was nervous. What if it felt awkward, strange, or too formal? After all, I didn't know these people, and the culture was so different. What if I did something wrong? But the moment I stepped over the threshold of their house, all my fears evaporated. It felt like stepping into a different world where every gesture, every glance, and every sound was somehow special. Tokyo at its quietest. My host, Mr. Takahashi, greeted me with such warmth that all my worries disappeared. His kind eyes and friendly smile made everything seem okay. He was tall, about 20 years older than me, but his calm and confidence made me feel completely at ease. It didn't hit me right away, but his home wasn't just a place to sleep. It was an artwork, every corner thoughtfully arranged. The neighborhood was quiet, with hardly any tourists around. Compared to the bustling streets where people rush, heads down in their phones, this place had a special peace. The homes, surrounded by meticulously trimmed gardens and tiny shops open late into the evening, felt like part of one big puzzle. Mr. Takahashi and I went on several walks through these streets, and every time I noticed something new. Colorful signs, aromas in the air that I had never smelled before. Dinner and Japanese culinary rituals. What stood out the most, though, was our first dinner together. It wasn't just a meal, it was a ritual. Mrs. Takahashi was preparing food with such joy, explaining how every ingredient had its own significance. It didn't matter so much what we were eating, but how we ate. I watched the family, each member in their place, eat with such care and respect for the process, as if the act of sharing food was something sacred. At one point, I joined them in cooking a traditional Japanese dish, ozoni, a soup with rice, vegetables, and fish. I hadn't expected that even cooking it would involve philosophy, how to make the broth just right, how to tune into the flavors and textures to create harmony. The small Japanese details that became special. Every day, I discovered little things I would never have noticed as a tourist. For example, they had a special space for shoes by the door. You had to take your shoes off before entering and then wear slippers inside. I knew about this custom, but here it felt like more than just a rule. It was a part of their way of life. These little things made the place feel alive in a way that was hard to explain. One evening, while returning from a walk, I noticed they had placed tiny candles by the door. I asked about it, and it turned out to be a family tradition. They did this to bless the coming day, and the candles symbolized gratitude for life's moments. A homecoming that wasn't quite the same. After several days, I realized that this trip was more than just a vacation. It was a little revelation. I started noticing how these small things were what really formed a deep understanding of a country, its people, and their lives. I walked around Tokyo with a completely new perspective, one I couldn't have gained by just staying in hotels. The locals smiled at me as if I was one of them. I began noticing how everyone took care to bring a little joy and peace to their everyday lives. When it was time to leave, I realized that this trip had become something much more than just an escape. I left with the feeling that it's the unusual and informal moments that make everything more colorful. I encourage anyone visiting Japan to ask themselves, has anyone else stayed with a host family? Share your experiences, tips, or advice for first-timers. These moments of connection, of small but meaningful rituals, are worth experiencing at least once.